made you want to build this rifle?
Well, the whole concept of the rifle basically started with a friend of mine that had gone to Colorado on an elk hunt. And he was a large man. He didn't particularly get any exercise, any job of any consequence. And the hunting trip that he signed up for was basically the guy that owned the ground put him in a pickup truck and hauled him to the top of the mountain, dumped him off with a sack lunch and said, "I'll see you at dark." And that was his elk trip. And he was carrying a 300 Weatherby with a big red field, wide field scope on it, probably pushing 13 and a half, 14 pounds. And the second day of his trip, it started snowing pretty early in the morning, and he's still wandering around on the mountain looking for an elk. And as time goes on, the snow's getting deeper and deeper, and now it's getting seriously deep. And he leans his gun up against a tree, ties some flagging tape around it, and flags himself back out to the road and walks back down to the ranch. Because walking on the road was a whole lot easier than it was in the woods with all the snow that was building up. And when the storm cleared, 3 days later, he rented a hoist and went back up on the mountain to get his gun. Well, he picked his gun up, brought it home, went down to the local sports shop, put it up for sale, and came over here. And we were friends. I mean, I was very well known as a gunsmith in the area, and if anything needed to be fixed on a firearm, folks brought it to me. And he came in and he said, "I want you to build me the lightest 7 mag that you can." Well, that kind of got the wheels started, so there was a lot of as light as you can. So what are you going to work with? You've got all kinds of options. You already know you're going to put a 24-inch barrel on it, and it's going to be from Douglas, and you've spent a good bit of time working with those folks down there, and you represent, or you know how they represent their product and how good it is, and you're comfortable with that part of it. So you're going from there into what action are you going to use, and that means looking at a lot of different things. And part of the things that I was looking at was not only how light it is, but how stiff is it? Because stiffness is a function of how well it's going to shoot. The decision was which action am I going to use, and it was between the Magnum Seiko action and the Winchester Model 70. Winchester 70 action was a lot stiffer than the Seiko, but the Seiko was a lot lighter. So the choice was to use the Seiko action instead of the Winchester, and got a stock from Lee 6 and put this thing together. And when it was finished, the gun was just over 7.5 pounds. And my friend was absolutely elated. He was just almost turning backflips. He couldn't believe that it could be done that weight. And I said, with all the research that I've done and all the time that I've spent on this project, I've decided that it's way too heavy, and I'm gonna build a 6mm that weighs 6 pounds with a scope on it. That's my goal. And he told me basically that I was full of it, and there was no possible way that I could do it. So then the thinking and the calculating and all of that started, and I had a barreled action about a month and a half after that, and spent 4 years working on the stock. Because the stock is kind of the overlooked part of, well, as far as I'm concerned, of the firearm. And when you look at the dimensions of everything that's there, you say, okay, it's a 700 Remington that's real small in diameter. Well, kind of is. But when you reduce the diameter, you also reduce the stiffness. Well, when you reduce the stiffness, you reduce the opportunity for that thing to perform well. So if I'm going to lose it in the action, I got to put it back in the stock. And that ain't easy. But the stock itself is capable of supporting over 400 pounds end to end. And finished stock weighs 17 ounces, including a recoil pad and 2 ounces of paint.
First year, getting ready to go to SHOT Show.
Oh boy. That was in 1984, late year. SHOT Show was in January, it was in Atlanta. And we gathered up everything that we needed to run the show, which was 4 guns and some literature. And we hauled it all down on an airplane to Atlanta, and we're carrying it in, 3 of us are carrying it in the next day. And we walk up to the front door of the convention center in Atlanta, and the first booth that I can see inside the door is Browning's booth. And Browning's booth at that time was probably something on the other side of 2,000 square feet or more. It was twice as big as the shop that I was going to produce this rifle in. And I stopped and turned around to the guys I was with and I said, I got no business in this room. And I was prepared to leave. And they insisted that we'd already spent the money that we had to go. But 30 cents would have sent me down the road in the opposite direction, because I had no confidence with the kind of money and the kind of business approach that the industry had that I could participate. And it was a long time before I felt like I belonged in that room. But the NRA helped me with that in 1987 when they put this rifle on the cover of the American Rifleman. And Pete Dickey was responsible for that. He was the editor at the time. And he would come by the booth every year and look at the rifles and say, boy, we need to do an article. And it was an NRA show in New Orleans. Nobody came. Pete came by, looked at the rifle again, said, we got to do an article. I said, tell me what you want. And he stopped and looked down the aisle left and right, and there wasn't a soul around. And he said, you've been at it for 1.5 years now, right? I said, yep. Venture capital's gone, ain't it? Yep. Not selling many guns, are you? Nope. By the time I get an article put together, photographs, and get it in line, we got 6 months involved in it. And in 6 months' time, Melvin, you'll be gone. I said, Pete, I own the building. I own the equipment. If I can sell 2 guns a month, there ain't a boot in this room big enough to kick me out. And he said, send me a 243. And this is it. And they put the rifle on the cover of the American Rifleman that year. And I found out that was what was going to happen when a friend of mine in Pennsylvania called me when he got his copy a day before I got mine. And so I've got a copy of the American Rifleman with this rifle on the cover and my name on the magazine, where it was mailed to, which I think is pretty neat.
And the phone ain't quit ringing since.
Ain't quit ringing since. And I have come to find out since then that there are people selling that magazine on eBay for over $100.
Really? So what about, but the first SHOT Show?
SHOT Show.
You met Jim Carmichael.
Well, I knew going in that I didn't have any advertised money. And I knew that if I could just get this gun in the writer's hand, I wouldn't have to buy any advertisement, because part of their job is to let folks know about what's going on. And I knew that this would get their attention if I could just get them to touch it. So for 6 months, I bought every magazine on the rack. And I digested every single article that was written. And in 6 months' time, I got a feeling for who they were, what they were made out of, and what kind of turned their crank. I also had an opportunity to see what they looked like. And when they walked up to my booth or by my booth, I'd step out, stop them in the aisle, and shove a gun in their face. And that's kind of what I did. But I wrote a letter to every editor, every gun editor, in every magazine out there in 1984. And Jim Carmichael's the only one that responded. And about 20 minutes or a half hour after the show started, first day, and we're in the basement, I mean against the loading dock. And here comes Jim up the aisle, and he's wearing one of those German hunting caps with about 9 feet of pheasant feathers sticking out of the back of it, and an entourage of about 5 people behind him, just like little ducks. And he stepped up to the booth, and he never introduced himself or anything. I knew who he was already at that point. I just handed him a gun. And it was a 708 that had a 3-9 loophole compact on it. And the rifle weighed 5 pounds, 12 ounces with a scope on it. And he's sitting there kind of doing it like this. And he said, I know how you made it so light. You took the glass out of the loophole scope. And he made nice comments about the rifle and was not at all condescending or anything. And we came back home, show's over, we came back home, met a lot of people, had a lot of fun. It was interesting to see all of the different ads that you see in the magazines about this product and that product, and there's the guy standing right there in front of you, shaking your hand and saying, how you doing? And telephone rings. We're not here. We're chasing a lead for a guy that was going to do some work for us. He was going to broach our actions up in Pennsylvania. And my son answered the phone, and it was Jim, and he said, well, have Melvin call me. Well, the next morning, I am just chomping, I've got to call Jim Carmichael. Here's his phone number. And I'm thinking, man, I got to wait till at least 9 o'clock. I mean, he's an important individual, and I'm chomping at the bit to call. And about 20 minutes after 7, the phone rings, and it's Jim. And he said, you going to call me or what? I said, well, I figured you didn't start to work until 9 o'clock. He said, I've been here since 6. He said, I've decided I want to put your gun in, new guns for 85. This is what I need for you to do. Send a gun. Here's where it's going, and away we went.
Have you ever had anything in your hands that was more familiar than that to you?
Oh, goodness, no. No, heavens no, not even close. But the whole process, does it make any difference when the paper's totally clean and you've got no predisposed notions on which way you're going to go? There's just a whole lot of things that enter into it. You say, okay, well, we want to make this action as light as we can. And there's a lot of ways to do that, but losing diameter and losing length, because this Model 20 action, it's got a 3-inch magazine length, but the action's about 3/4 of an inch shorter than a short action anything, because everything's been gone. It's been all taken out of the middle. So one thing leads to another. You say, okay, we're going to reduce the diameter. Bolt's got to be reduced. Now we're going to reduce the firing pin. Well, when you reduce the firing pin, you're losing mass. You're using kinetic energy. So you got to jump the firing pin spring to make up for it. Well, when you do that, you got to start tightening up tolerances, or you can't cock it when you've got an extra 8 pounds of spring pressure to get it to go off. So one aspect influences another aspect, and it's all part of the give and take to come up with what this thing's going to end up being. And the only thing that I would have changed, but I didn't do, and it was a big consideration, is the location of the extractor. To make everything work as cleanly as it's possible to do, the ejection should take place at 180 degrees, straight out of the port. Well, if I do that, I got to cut into the lug to do it. And structural integrity goes away when you've reduced everything already, and now you go monkeying with the dimensions of the lug by putting a hole in it or a slot in it or whatever. The structural integrity's gone. So now you've weakened the action. So what's the biggest comment I get when we first got started, and people pick that up and say, well, can you shoot full power loads in that action? I mean, can you use factory ammunition? And say, well, of course you can. Why wouldn't you? Well, it's just so small. Well, yeah, but, you know, we measure PSI on pounds per square inch. So we're building a pressure vessel, and that's what this is. It's a pressure vessel. So we're building a pressure vessel, and if we reduce the diameter of that pressure vessel, we didn't make it weaker, we actually made it stronger. I mean, the best analogy I can give you is the room you're sitting in. You know, 60 PSI in that room, blow the walls down. But you could put 60 PSI in a soda straw without any trouble at all. The one comment that I've had that makes me real proud over the years, it's kind of unsolicited, was this is from customers that already had rifles. And you know, I can remember one SHOT Show where I'm standing there talking to a guy that I'd built a 257 Roberts for. And my buddy's talking to a guy over here, and I'd built him a 257 Roberts also. And all of a sudden, we just kind of stepped back out of the way and let these two guys sell guns, because they're both getting in their wallets and pulling out targets and talking about loads that they're using, and we were just kind of out of it. And the one unsolicited comment that I've gotten, I have no idea how many times, was that this is the only rifle I own that feels alive in my hand. And alive is all based on balance. And you know, in all of the years that we've been doing this, a lot of people have been shooting at us, but the thing they've been shooting at's weight, and that's what they can't do. I mean, we got the weight, but we also have the balance. And you can abbreviate barrel lengths and what have you, and all you're going to end up with is a rifle that's either butt or muzzle heavy. And none of them are going to be more than a 2x4 in the woods. They're not going to point and handle the way they really need to.